it was an interesting weekend of college football. A lot of games that it was further cemented didn't matter because of the bowl system, and that's going to be even worse next year. I don't know who's going to watch any bowl game that's not in the top 12 aside from that team's fan base. I don't know who.
I'll watch the games, Dave. I'll watch them.
Well, yeah, you will because you don't have a social life. Uh, so you had a bunch of guys opting out and all this stuff, and it was okay to do that. Under this current scenario, it was okay to play Nico. So I want to get big picture a little bit how college football can fix this thing because it's a little goofy. But it wouldn't have been okay to play Nico because you would have been forcing a guy out. 5 years ago, John, let me start with you. Does Nico play, or football so different you stick with the senior and you expect him to play?
Yeah, it would have been different. I mean, Josh Heupel stuck with the senior all year. So he stuck with him against Vanderbilt. If you knew you were going to play Nico in a bowl game, why wouldn't you play him against Vanderbilt? I mean, why wouldn't you start him against Vanderbilt? No matter how much you practice, how many reps you get, and all that kind of thing, the game presents different looks. Things happen that aren't according to script in a game. It just makes a difference playing in games. And as well begone as Vanderbilt might be, it's still a game. So to me, that would make sense if that's your strat. If you think and I don't know when he decided I'm going to start Nico in the bowl game. I don't know when that happened. But if he decided it, earlier, why wouldn't you play him against, go ahead and start him against Vanderbilt?
I'm with you. Caleb, a suggestion on the message board. Nico, I am the lava. He's hot. It's weak.
Okay, that's one we don't have to worry about.
That's weak, meat drinker. I love you, but that's weak. What are your concerns with college football right now, Caleb? Because we saw a bunch of games where I don't think anybody cared.
First, so John, I'm going to try to date you a bit. I'm going to have you date yourself. I guess is the best way to say this. Or date.
Tough to do. War of 1812 reference.
But John, I think it's just a little.
I tell you that winter in Jamestown was really challenging. I don't want to bring up old bad news, but was very challenging. Go ahead.
I'm doing a shameless plug. For those who don't know, I did a sports history video 2 days ago on the history of how the college football postseason and national championships evolved over 100 years. And there was a period of time before the 60s when the polls were released before the bowl games. And during that time period, it is pretty clear that bowls were glorified exhibitions. So the way bowl games are treated now as glorified exhibitions, is there any less climactic or more underwhelming than it was back in the 1950s? Like, I know Tennessee's national title in 1951, they went to the Sugar Bowl and lost to Maryland, but did Neyland really care about being in that Sugar Bowl?
Well, see, at one time you had the two polls, you had AP and UPI, and one was decided before the bowl and one was decided after the bowl games, which obviously made more sense. But back in those days, the thing about it was you look forward to bowl matchups. Often you were seeing teams that maybe it was the Big Ten versus the SEC, and those teams don't play during the regular season, or back then the Southwest Conference, the Big 12, the Pac-12. There was sort of a greater sense of the unknown and how an SEC team might stack up against a team from another conference. So that the bowl games had that appeal, and they were the high mark. Qualifying for a bowl game signified success. There's no playoff. So they really meant something. Fans plan vacations around bowl games. I guess some of them still do that.
It seems like it's got, I used to know like dozens, and it seems like it's more like 10 or 12.
Yeah, let's go to Shreveport in December, okay? Let's book a room there and we can go play the slots in Bossier City. It's just so different. But even back then, I remember it was just like awful. oh, I want to see this team play that team. Those are the two best teams. Why can't they play? They can't play because the Rose Bowl has a Big Ten Pac-12 matchup, or the SEC or the Sugar Bowl has an SEC versus somebody matchup. So those games didn't happen. As a fan, even as a kid, way back in the 1600s, it was really frustrating to see that because you couldn't get these games. Now we get them, and now we're going to get even more with the 12 teams. I do think that making a bowl used to signify success, but now you have 6 and 6 teams make bowl games. So and how ludicrous is it that coaches get a bowl bonus? They get more money
Oh,
for
I know.
making a bowl?
Oh, I know. I mean, goodness gracious. For making a bowl, I mean, that's not incredibly.
Like, yeah, you
Look at
fall
all.
out of bed. You made a bowl. Give me 150,000.
And you can even make a bowl with Joe Milton as your starter.
Wait, guys, but weren't you so inspired by Butch Jones's bowl-bound shirt that he wore after Arkansas State went 6 and 6 this year?
I hated that shirt.
Oh, I'm sure he did. That is so sad.
He wore
the
it.
man just
That was very sad.
he does
And
not know
somebody
the
got-
meaning.
somebody
He
got on me
doesn't
about-
know that. He
Go ahead,
doesn't
Chuck.
know the meaning of the word introspection. Never heard it. Never
No.
learned it.
Never heard the phrase "read the room."
Yeah.
Yes, read the room.
I'll never forget that glorious Music City Bowl with a quarterback who was comparable to Iowa's quarterback yesterday. And Butch ordered a couple of players to carry him off the field after that magnificent victory in Nashville.
Okay, so fixing college football, how can we do this? What's worse, John? The fact that we didn't have a consensus national champion, and I'm old enough to remember that. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. That was the early 90s, and you had Georgia Tech, Colorado, and all these weird teams getting a piece of the national championship. There was no playoff. I thought it was scheduled. I thought it was like you had Kirby Smart railing against the opt-outs after a 63-3 win against Florida State. Florida State was left out. And then you had Hugh Freeze with some comments that, Caleb, I want you to get to. But, this has gone from a Christian McCaffrey going, and it was a big deal, to 10 or 12 people are opting out per team. What was it that Hugh Freeze said? And then John, can this be fixed?
I don't think it can be fixed. I mean, college football, the people who administer it basically have raised a white flag. I say they're crying out in the wilderness for Congress to come in. Oh, yeah, that'll solve everything. Look how well the country's doing right now. Yeah, bring in Congress. That'd be awesome. I mean, seriously, here's the thing. You want to see the best teams play for the championship. And this selection committee complicated things by the way it chose its 4-team field. When it says we want the 4 best teams, does anybody on this planet think Georgia isn't one of the 4 best teams?
No.
Of course not. I don't think anybody in this playoff field wanted to play Georgia. I don't think, including Alabama, that just beat Georgia. But Georgia's got the best team, and it win the champion. If it had got in the playoff, it would have won the national championship again. But it didn't get in, so that's the way it goes. I'm wondering. This is just. I could go on with this for hours. Because the calendar is so screwed up. I mean, you're recruiting high school players, signing them in December. You got transfers going out. You're trying to get transfers from the portal, trying to keep them from going into the portal. All this free agency as you're coming down the stretch of your season. I mean, the NFL, you don't have guys declaring for free agency a week before the playoffs.
You're right. And Caleb, what was it that your buddy, your favorite coach, Gus Malzahn, said?
No, not Gus Malzahn, Hugh Freeze, who
Oh, it's Hugh Freeze.
John, who I, as a human, just cannot stand and absolutely despise. But did you see?
There's no room for personal feelings in this
That's right.
business.
Well,
Caleb.
he's a potential pedophile, but other than that,
Yes.
is
Yes.
What?
Caleb gets into that.
Oh,
What did you say?
He is a Hugh Freeze when he was at Briarcrest in Memphis when there were women who accused him, high school girls who said when they weren't in school uniform, he would make them take off their shirt and sit in his office while somebody else brought the uniform for them. So yeah, Hugh Freeze is a bit of he's a very, 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 very sketchy and terrible person.
Sketchy.
But
Yes.
anybody can say anything about anybody else. I mean,
There were legions of accusers. And we can talk about how he snaked the players that he recruited to Ole Miss when he tried to throw Houston Nutt under the bus for his cheating, and then he lied to try to keep them locked into their signings. But Hugh Freeze said,
that's gamesmanship. Go ahead.
"Oh, okay."
By the way, let me get this in real quick. This moral judgment is brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best in sports memorabilia, daily updates. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook, Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Anybody else you would like to attack, Caleb?
Well, okay, so John, Hugh Freeze said, and he used this opt-out as an excuse for Auburn losing to Maryland, but I don't know if you saw him throw his staff under the bus with this quote. His exact quote was, he says, the game plan was ineffective for the game. That's why Auburn lost. And then he says, quote, I didn't get too involved in it until this week because of recruiting. So,
well, I mean, it's easy to laugh at it, but to some extent, I understand it. I mean, he's got all these transfers. He's trying to rebuild a program. I guarantee you, to some extent, Josh Heupel handed over the game plan in his first year to Banks, and it would have been goalish at the time. I kind of understand it. There's only so many hours in the day.
Well, Caleb clearly has a vendetta against Hugh Freeze, and that sort of colors his commentary.
He discussed.
We get that, Caleb. We get that. Okay, we get that.
I felt that way about Joe Paterno back in the day too, by the way, just so y'all know, and I turned out to be right on that.
Just a creepy thing about Hugh Freeze that I uncovered in recruiting is, you know what he evaluates first when he looks at a player? Not on film, but like he meets them. Did I tell you this?
Oh, I'm almost scared for you to say this. Go ahead.
Looks at their ankles. He thinks a great athlete has thin ankles.
I think a great athlete, if he has thin ankles, he has remember Darren McFadden at Arkansas?
Yeah. He had big biceps.
He had big biceps. He had tiny, painfully thin ankles, and he couldn't stay healthy. If you don't have a strong foundation,
well, maybe he's looking for the bigger ankles.
Oh, now you're not sure if he said he's looking for bigger ankles or thinner ankles
or cheerleaders.
Boy, you and Caleb, you guys have really laid out a strong court case for this. I'd like to be the opposing attorney in this courtroom.
Yeah, our Auburn podcast airs next week to no one.
It will be, I can't remember now. I want bigger ankles, thinner ankles. Hey, take off your pants, would you?
Portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products, and quality matters. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED to get 10% off. Promo code HOOKED to get 10% off. And the Big Orange Crunch is 50% off the day after Tennessee wins. So they, of course, beat Iowa in the Citrus Bowl, so you can get 50% off the Big Orange Crunch. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Again, that quality and knowing what you're getting before you put it in your body is so incredibly important.